You walk into a room and immediately sense that something is off. Someone's voice changes, their face is tightened, a pause lasts half a second too long. And before anyone says a word, your body is already preparing. You may call that empathy. Your nervous system may call it survival. Maybe you are deeply empathetic, or maybe you became exceptionally good at reading people because at some point in your life you needed to. Those two abilities can look almost identical from the outside, but they feel very different on the inside. Empathy creates connection. Hypervigilance creates pressure. Empathy helps you understand another person. Hypervigilance makes you feel responsible for what might happen next. So, in this video today, I want to explore a question that may change the way you understand your sensitivity. Are you truly empathetic, or have you learned to constantly monitor everyone around you? In a moment, I'll give you a quick self-check, and later we look at a side of empathy that receives far less attention. Some people can read you extremely well and still use what they see against you. But first, let's begin with a simple scene. Picture this. A friend tells two people about a difficult conflict at work. The first person quickly says, "You need to set better boundaries." Then comes the solutions, the advice, the explanations. The second person pauses and asks, "What was the hardest part for you?" And then, "What did you need in that moment?" Later the friend says, "Thank you. I finally feel understood." Both people wanted to help. One wanted to solve the problem, the other wanted to understand the person. That's where empathy begins. What empathy really means? Empathy means aiming to understand what an experience feels like from another person's point of view. It means becoming curious about their thoughts, emotions, and perspective. And all that while remaining connected to your own. That's important. The last part matters. Empathy does not require self-abandonment. And it does not require agreement. You can understand someone's pain and still set a boundary. You can recognize why they made a decision and still believe it was the wrong one. You can care deeply without taking responsibility for everything they feel. Mature empathy says, "I take your experience seriously, and I remain connected to myself." Empathy is not mind reading. A sensitive person may notice a great deal, but noticing is not the same as knowing. A look can mean many things. So can silence. An irritated tone may have something to do with you or nothing at all. Maybe the person is tired. Maybe they are overwhelmed. Maybe something happened to them that you know nothing about. Empathy is not certainty. It is a respectful attempt to understand. Instead of saying, "I know exactly how you feel," a more grounded response might be, "I wonder, does it hurt you? Am I getting that right?" That small difference matters. One response defines the other person's experience, and the other invites them to describe it. Real empathy assumes less and asks more. when sensitivity comes from survival. Some people grew up in homes where moods changed quickly, where anger appeared without warning, where silence felt threatening, where safety depended on noticing small changes early. So they learned to scan. How does that voice sound? What does the expression mean? How hard did they close the door? Is a room calm? Or is something about to happen? Over time, the nervous system becomes highly skilled at detecting subtle shifts. From the outside, that can look like extraordinary empathy. Sometimes it is empathy. Sometimes it is hypervigilance. The central question changes. Empathy asks, what is this person experiencing? Hypervigilance asks, what does this mean for my safety? And both can exist at the same time. And if this describes you, please, your sensitivity is not fake. It may simply be carrying more fear and responsibility than empathy was ever meant to carry. That is not a character flaw. It is often an intelligent survival response. It may have protected you once, but today it may leave you exhausted. You notice everything, you interpret everything, and you feel responsible for everyone. Empathy, compassion, and helping. Empathy, compassion, and helping are connected, but they are not the same. Empathy helps you understand. Compassion makes you care. Helping is a choice. That distinction matters because understanding someone does not make you responsible for regulating their emotions. You can care, you can offer support, and you can still decide what you're able and willing to give. A quick self-check. Ask yourself, can I listen without preparing my reply? Can I care about someone even when I disagree with them? Can I stay curious instead of assuming I already know what they feel? Can I set a boundary without believing I have failed them? Can I accept that another person's emotional experience may be different from mine? Now consider a second set of questions. Do I often feel responsible for the mood in the room? Do I rush to reduce tension because conflict feels unsafe? Do I quickly change myself when someone is disappointed? Do I lose track of my own needs while focusing on everyone else? If the first question sounds familiar, empathy may be one of your strengths. If the second group hits harder, your empathy may be mixed with hypervigilance, people-pleasing, over responsibility. That does not make your empathy less real. It means your nervous system deserves a place in the conversation too. Empathy or over responsibility? Empathy says, I see that you're hurting. Over responsibility says, it is my job to make sure you stop hurting. Empathy says, I understand that you are angry. People-pleasing says, I have to change myself so you will stop being angry. Empathy respects another person's emotion. Over-responsibility takes ownership of them. They may look loving, but over time it becomes exhausting, and sometimes it prevents growth. Other people need space to experience their own feelings, make their own choices, and take responsibility for their behavior. You can support someone without becoming their emotional regulation system. 4 myths about empathy. Myth number 1. Empathetic people always say yes. They do not. A healthy no can be deeply respectful. Boundaries give relationships clarity and safety. Myth number 2. Feeling deeply automatically makes you empathetic. Truth is, strong feelings mean you experience life intensely. Empathy also requires the ability to distinguish your emotions from someone else's. Myth number 3. Empathy means agreement. You can say, I understand where you're coming from, and I see it differently. Myth number 4. Empathetic people avoid conflict. Not true. Mature empathy can tolerate difference. It does not require false harmony. The side of empathy people rarely discuss. Now we come to the side of empathy that many people overlook. Some people can read you extremely well. For example, many narcissists, while most people think they can't, they can. They notice your fears, your hopes, your emotional triggers, your longing for approval. And they may still use that, what they say, against you. Accurately reading another person is not the same as caring about them. This is where cognitive empathy matters. Cognitive empathy is the ability to understand another person's perspective and emotional state. By itself, that ability is neither kind nor cruel. What matters is how it is used. It can support good leadership, helpful communication, therapy, intimacy, and trust. It can also become a tool for pressure, persuasion, or manipulation. So do not only ask, does this person understand me? Also ask, what do they do with that understanding? Do they respect what they learn? Do they protect your vulnerability? Do they take your boundaries seriously? Or do they use your inner world to gain control? The real test is not how accurately someone reads you, it is how responsible they use what they learn. The dignity compass. Yes, I call this the dignity compass. Empathy without self-respect becomes self-abandonment. Self-respect without empathy can become coldness. Dignity protects both people. Dignity says, I take you seriously. And I take myself seriously too. I want to understand you, and I will not disappear in the process. I respect your emotions, and I remain responsible for my boundaries. That is what healthy connection looks like. Not closeness at any cost, not distance as protection, connection with dignity. What real empathy looks like. Real empathy is often quiet. You listen, you pause, you stay curious. You ask instead of assuming. You allow the other person to find their own words. You do not rush to fix, and you do not force meaning onto their experience. You might say, I may be wrong, but I wonder if that felt dismissive, or did I understand you correctly? Empathetic people often notice a great deal. Grounded people also know they may be mistaken. And that combination matters. Sensitivity and humility. Why empathy becomes harder. Empathy becomes more difficult when we feel threatened, when we're tired, when we feel ashamed, when we desperately want to be right, or when another person's story activates our own. At that point, we may no longer be listening to them. We may be listening to our own history. So, when you notice that happening, work on saying silently, something in me is reacting strongly right now. That creates space, and space creates more choices. A 3-step practice. The next time you are in an important conversation, explore 3 simple steps. First, notice what the person actually said. Second, notice what you added in your own mind. Third, ask. You could say, did I understand you correctly? What did that experience mean to you? Or would it help more if I listened, offered perspective, or helped you think through a solution? Simple questions can create very different conversations. One question that changes everything. Here's the question I promised. Ask yourself, am I trying to understand or am I trying to convince? Both can be valid, but they are different tasks. Understanding requires curiosity. Convincing requires argument. Problems begin when we pretend to do one while secretly doing the other. The deeper question. Maybe the most important question is not how empathetic am I? Maybe it is, can I understand another person without abandoning myself? That is mature empathy. I see you. I care about what you are experiencing, and I remain connected to myself. Because the deepest test of empathy is not how much you feel, it is whether you can understand another person without losing yourself. If you want psychology translated into practical steps for a clearer, more grounded life, subscribe to this channel. Here we explore how to understand yourself, relate to others, and live with greater freedom, wisdom, and dignity. I'm Carsten Nowak, and the next video is about why you feel guilty when someone else is upset.